live. We're actually brewing a batch of blonde ale right now, so if Matt needs to run off and do something, don't worry. Also, the sound might be a little, because we're in a live brewing environment. So thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Cheers. Let's start with that.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
I know it's a little early, but
we're doing it live.
Friday,
it's Friday.
Right?
So we've got some questions, and any questions you drop into the chat, we'll go ahead and answer. So let's start. Let's jump on in.
Let's jump on in. So we got a couple questions that were previously written. First one, favorite hop right now. You got a hop that you're like super excited about, that you love.
All right. Favorite hop right now. So for me, I'm gonna say Rowaka. I've kind of just really been digging it. Super diesel-y kind of berry. Like, it's like, I don't want to say poor man's Nelson, but like, I've been digging Rowaka lately. What about you, Matt?
2 years ago, went to CBC, and that was the first time that I was introduced to HBC 586. It still doesn't have a name. It's still HBC 586. I'm expecting there'll be a name sooner or later, but I love it. And now they're doing a cryo version of that, and we've been using a lot of that. I just love how I love the flavor profile of that hop, and 586.
Yeah, that is a good one. I love the beers that you've made with that.
Yeah.
Great question.
All right, how about a fermentation question? How long do I keep my beer in the fermenter? How long can I keep my beer in the fermenter after fermentation is finished?
I hate to be the, well, that depends kind of guy.
Yeah, that's
but
what I
it
was going
totally depends. It depends on the fermenter you're using. It depends on the yeast, the yeast you're using, and whether you dry hopped it or not, right?
Yeah, all of those.
If you have a fermenter like a conical, like we have behind me, where you're able to harvest the yeast off the bottom, you can keep your beer on there for longer than you would if you're fermenting in say a carboy, because what happens is that weight of the beer on top of that yeast cake is going to start really affecting the yeast health quite a bit. It'll start bursting those cells called autolysis. You end up with sort of meaty flavors. In fact, I think that's what's that spread they use that they love in Australia?
Oh, Vegemite.
Yeah, Vegemite is a yeast-based, meaty.
Yeah, it's definitely got like a meaty kind of dog food.
Yeah.
And I think it also really depends, like, because like you were saying, that weight, so that's hydrostatic pressure. So like on a homebrew level, you've only got like this much. There's not as much, and you might be in a carboy. You don't have a way to do it, so you can go a little longer. But yeah, you don't want to leave it on there too long. A couple weeks tops, and that might even be excessive.
Right. If you've dry hopped your beer, you definitely want to get it off with dry hops. I'd say within 3-4 days.
Yeah, 3-4 days. Where I think I've read 7. That you just really start to pick up vegetal, lawnmower shaving flavors. Things like
but that. if you're in a conical and you're able to harvest your yeast, get your beer off the yeast, dry hop, get your beer off the hops. You can kind of use, and you can get that temperature down to say 30. You can use it as a uni.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They call these like uni tanks for a reason, because you're able to get that yeast out of there, get the dry hops out of there. You can even carbonate, and theoretically you could probably even serve on them, too.
We package our beer off of these tanks.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think inevitably, if you have the ability to drop the yeast, the hops, and things like that, So yeah. So, justification for a conical fermenter.
Awesome. Kind of in the same vein, for a home brewer, how critical is the pitch temperature versus fermentation temperature? Should you chill all the way down to the target before pitching?
Great question. So the question, how critical is the pitch temperature versus the fermentation temperature? And I think there's a lot of, and you could probably speak to it a little more elaborate, but there's a lot of studies out there that within that first, 24, even 12 hours, a lot of those esters are produced. So you do want to be as close as you can to your pitching temp. With that said, I think 2 to 4 degrees, maybe even a little more than that, and let like your glycol or whatever you're using to chill kind of get you that final pressure. But yeah,
I always err under and over, and let the dynamics of fermentation naturally take the temperature up to where I've set my set point.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you start over, then you're at risk of really developing some of these esters, especially if you're brewing a lager, that you don't want in the beer.
Yeah.
But definitely the fermentation temperature control is one of the most critical aspects of brewing, in my opinion.
Yeah, we can't stress that enough. Like we make wort, the yeast make the beer. Give them the ideal working environment that they want. You know, you work at, you know, it would suck to be 100 degrees in here and for us to have to work in it, right? So you want your yeast to work in a good environment.
I always say we make yeast food.
Yeah, we make yeast food.
The yeast makes the beer. We just give it a warm, cozy environment to live and eat and have sex and, well... Reproduce.
Yeah.
Singular.
Yeah, there's not a male.
You know what I mean. Anyways, yeah, that's all we do as a brewer is we control the environment in which the yeast do their work. We're managers.
We're managers, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Great question. So another one, just kind of a comment. Can you speak of diacetyl reabsorption by the yeast? Is that you know, I don't know if that's maybe a comment to what you guys are talking about, but
diacetyl. Okay, so diacetyl reabsorption by the yeast. You want to speak
While I did graduate from the UC Davis Master Brewer program, I'm not going to claim to be Charlie Bamforth and throw out all the biochemistry of it, but definitely one of the most important things you can do for yourself is not take diacetyl for granted. So what we do here is, while there's still probably 5-10 points of gravity left, I start bumping the temperature up from my fermentation temperature to about 70 degrees. And that will allow the yeast to reabsorb the diacetyl, the VDKs that have been
the precursor, right?
The precursor of diacetyl that's been produced. And it spits out a compound that isn't as detectable to the human tongue, right? There's always going to be a very minute, small amount of diacetyl in every beer.
Even if you use something like ALDC,
correct,
it's still there.
Yeah, that's not the ALDC isn't the magic bullet.
Yeah, it reduces the amount of VDKs produced.
Yeah. And that being said, there's a lot of research now and a lot of talk on hop creep, right? Mm-hmm. That leads us into this.
Yeah.
What do you know about hop creep?
Yeah, so hop creep, I mean, so hops have, you know, a couple things on them, sugar being one, right? So now, and if you were measuring that, you'd see a sugar bump when you dry hopped. Boom, and now the yeast have something to chew on.
And enzymes.
Yeah, there is the AMG enzyme is present.
There's enzymes in hops as well.
Enzymes on hops, so they're also breaking down any long chain dextrins that you might have had in there to begin with, right, from your mash. So you are going to see, and so you're going to get diacetyl production when you dry hop. That is, you know, just a thing.
Can you guys elaborate on BDKs? What does that mean?
Bicydial diacetyl.
Bicynyl diketones.
Yeah. Yeah. That's BDK. Yeah. It's the precursor. It's what yeast produce, which is the precursor to diacetyl. Right?
And you know, you can always do a forced diacetyl test. Everybody has the ability to do that.
Yep.
Using the most important instrument you have in your brewery, your nose. Yep. And we'll do that as well. I'll put my a beer that I think is getting done, and I'll put it in a water bath, a hot water bath. Covered up with foil, hot water bath for about 12 minutes. Then I cool it down. Smell it. If the VDKs are still present in the wort, you're going to get diacetyl.
Yeah, and the thing I think also that helps with that too, especially the heating, it allows the diacetyl, but it also the alcohol burns off, so it really makes it. Your nose is picking it up. It's like it forces it out into the atmosphere or whatever. So that's an easy thing to do at home. We could all do. Forced VDK test.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome, guys. So here's an interesting one. Have you ever experimented pitching a lager and a Belgian ale yeast at the same method, at the same time, at 60 degrees Fahrenheit? Someone said they heard of this through Chris White at White Labs.
Oh, wow. So co-pitching, specifically a lager and a Belgian strain. First of all, I'm going to start with co-pitching in general.
This is all you. I've never done it.
You definitely need to ring it on here. Co-pitching in general is a tough one for me because you can never really control who takes off and who doesn't, right? So that's always been a fear of mine. Like when I was a commercial brewer, I never co-pitched Well, I take that back. We did lambics and stuff, so yeah, we're definitely co-pitching. But like with
I think that's different though.
That's different. Yeah, that's different. So I've never really co-pitched. There is like breweries locally here that I think that's part of. They'll do like Cal Ale with this. What's the one strain that we thought was Brett and then is classified as a Saccharomyces strain?
Are you talking about the GMO yeast that?
Not the GMO. Anyways, so people do co-pitch with great results. I don't have any experience to it, so I really don't know. Like, let's talk like lager and Belgian yeast then. Like lager, super clean, maybe a little like sulfur, SO2 type of flavor. Belgian, phenolic. Those play good together. I say try it, but yeah, what do you think?
Sure, I'm not that adventurous,
Yeah.
I guess.
Homebrewing, try it.
Absolutely, homebrewing, try it. I don't own this brewery. I'm just the brewer here, and I'm not willing to play with that kind of money for a beer that I don't think would have positive results.
Typically, anywhere from $1,000 to several $1,000s on a batch. Not something you want in ingredients. We're just talking about, so not something you want to play with. Yeah.
All right, cool. So a summertime question. Summer, it gets hard to chill. So last brew could only get down to 82 degrees. For a stout, would you shift to using a Quebec or run with Chico? Ester production going to be much different?
Well, so with the Quebec, okay, so the question is summertime with a stout specifically, and you could only get down to 82 degrees, and I guess you don't have any fermentation control is the question. So would you go with classic Chico or a Quebec strain? So Quebec, there's the wide world of Quebec. And I believe it's the Lutra strain, right? That is a cleaner strain. So if I was gonna go Quebec, I would go Lutra. I wouldn't do Hordenal or Voss, which are more estery, produce beautiful mango and things like that. Maybe tropical stout, I don't know. So if I was gonna use Quebec, I would do the Lutra. Yeah, with that said, I would do that over a Chico strain if I was at 80 degrees, because we've both had Chico at that degrees. And
if I had the means post knockout, say my wort chiller just isn't getting it down to pitching temp. If I had the means and all I had was Chico, I would make damn sure it's down to pitch temp before I pitch it, which means put it into a refrigerator, let it get down, check it. Even if I have to get up at 1 in the morning to pitch.
Yeah, the esters and the fusel alcohol that's going to be produced is going to make it not as good. Yeah.
Like I said before, temperature control in brewing is everything. You can spend all the money you want on fancy brew equipment, but as far as writing a recipe, that's all good and fine, but getting into these tanks and making sure that like we said before, the yeast has a comfortable place to reproduce and create quality beer, that's the most important thing in a brew house.
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
So here's a good question. We'll tie in Paul Brown's question about Station 31 into this question. Matt, I know you have to brew for the customers at the brewery, but if you had the ability to have 1 or 2 beer styles on draft, what would those be? And then maybe you could talk about Station 31 as that example, answer the question that Paul had about the percentage of smoke malt.
Sure. So
restate that if you don't mind.
The question, restate the question.
So if there's 1 or 2 beer styles that I would like to have on draft, I'll tell you, I always like to have, what I refer to as Brewers beers. Just maybe 1 or 2 Brewers beers. Yes, I'm going to have my IPA, my blonde, my light lager, which is what we're drinking, my hazy IPA, but I always want a beer where a home brewer or a brewer can come in and look at our board and say, wow, that's cool. So let's say the Smoked Helles is one of them, right? Mm-hmm. Even though that's not necessarily by a long shot our best seller, because it's a Smoked Helles and it's also July. That's one. Or say you know what one of my favorite styles is Weizenbock.
Oh yeah.
I love those beers. I know it wouldn't sell very well here, but that's another one that if you came in and saw Weizenbock on, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
they have all these cool beers, and they have an old man beer on tap.
Oh man, are we old men? We might be.
And then that goes into This smoked Helles, I believe Paul asked the percentage of smoked malt we used. And I'll tell you, Paul, that kept me up at night before we brewed it the first time. Because a little goes a long way, and you want it to be that Goldilocks beer, right? You want it to be just the right amount. And I settled on just shy, which seems like a lot, just shy of 18%. I think it was 17.6. And that gave me just enough smoked malt that you definitely get it on the nose. It's perceivable. It's pleasant. It doesn't smell like Easter Day ham. And the Helles, the base is what's most important here as well, right? You want to make sure that you put that smoke on a good base, and that the Helles has a really nice Hellesy, malty, semi-sweet background, and it finishes super dry. And I think with about 17%, you end up with a smoked Helles that finishes dry, pleasant. It's not coating your mouth with smoke.
That's a great, especially like talking about beer judging. Like you need to be able to discern the base style, right? And then the adjuncts or the other things should be pleasantries that add to the overall experience. Yeah. Which I think that beer is amazing. Also, elaborate a little bit about it. It's got a cool story, the firefighter side.
Oh yeah, well, before I was a brewer, I was in the medical field. I was a volunteer firefighter for some years, and I still have love in my heart for the profession and nothing but respect. And so we named Station 31, our smoked Helles, after the local fire station, the San Ramon Valley Fire Department. Right here in Danville is Station 31. So we named it Station 31. They came down and gave us a baseball cap with 31 on it, and a certain amount of sales from that beer went to the Burn Institute that helps firefighters who get burnt in the line of duty.
Cheers to that. Love that.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, how about post-fermentation? We're aging an imperial stout. How much does temperature affect aging?
That's a great question. So specifically talking about an imperial stout, aging it, how much does temperature affect? So, so basically the higher the temperature, the quicker the aging process is going to happen, within reason. You don't want to go high, but at cellar temps, that 50 degrees, the maturation stage is going to take longer, where if you're at 60, 70, it's going to go quicker. So those are, tools or things you might get there a little faster with a higher temp. I don't know if I'd recommend it because, the flavors develop slow. It's like barbecue, and slow and low is better, right?
Again, there's always going to be some yeast in there that does not like higher temperatures, and it's going to start spitting off flavors that you don't necessarily want in that beer.
Yeah, I'd keep it within reason.
Yep.
Great question. Okay, how about this one? When dry hopping, I've had to deal with mold infestation. I'm dunking hop bags in Star Sand, yet sometimes I'm still getting mold.
On the outside of the bag?
I think so.
Throw that bag away.
What are the best practices to avoid this, and is it safe to drink the beer? Maybe just talk about mold.
Well, okay. Let's talk about beer first, or go ahead.
Well, two questions. Yeah. Is it just on the outside of the bag? Because then you can just start saying that and wipe it down. Because if you keep it in a refrigerator that has moisture in it, depends on how old that.
Yeah. All right. So the question. Let's start with the question. Is it mold on the hop bag? Is it safe to dry hop with it? Sure, it's probably safe because two things. Beer has a lower pH, even if it's a standard run-of-the-mill beer, not a sour or anything like that. It's about 4.7, 4.8 pH, so it's kind of acidic. Then there's also alcohol present. So in theory, beer saved the world for a reason. It's got that. So you're probably okay. I don't know. The clean side of me is throw that frickin' bag away and get a new one is my answer. Because even if you visibly get rid of it, that would just be bags are so cheap. It's why try and keep reusing this nylon bag? That would be my side of the thing.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's the bag's cheap. Get a new one. I don't know. That's my take on there, and I don't know. Mold scares me, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, this one's for Dylan. He's talking about getting into the industry. So, what type of training, education would you most value when hiring He's a long-time homebrewer looking to dip his toes into the professional space. So, maybe what, talk
So a homebrewer looking to get into the industry, what type of training will you value? So I'm going to throw this question to Matt. So you say you're looking to hire an assistant brewer. What are you looking for?
While I did do the UC Davis program, the most experience or the most knowledge, the most education I got was actually getting in and doing it.
Hands-on.
Hands-on. I would say if you're trying to get into the industry, go down to a brewery and see if there's an opening for a cellar person, cleaning kegs,
Working on a canning line.
Working on a canning line, and that's how you get your feet wet that way. I'd also say join if you're not, join a homebrew club. You learn a lot about brewing, and you learn a lot from your compadres in the homebrewing world by drinking their beer and knowing what makes. I know Doe's. I've been a member of Doe's for many years, and I would say I learned quite a bit from our meetings and having speakers come in and talk to the ins and outs of brewing a great beer. And
the networking side that comes from the homebrew club. Yeah, like Matt said, commercial brewers are going to be coming through. So boom, that gives you an opportunity.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, people in the club that have been members for years know the commercial brewer scene, and they can plug you in with like, oh, these guys will let you come in and help out.
Networking, right?
Yeah, networking.
Yeah.
Every job I've got, it's been from knowing somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome. Is there a limit to how many times you can reuse Nova Lager or Quebec yeast from the fermenter after kegging?
That's you.
So the question is, how many times could you use specifically Nova Lager and Quebec yeast? I'm not going to speak to those specific strains because that's, I haven't reused either. Well, I've reused Quebec, specifically the Boss strain, several times. I'm brewing with Nova Lager this weekend, and it'll be the first time I'm brewing Nova Lager, so I've never reused that. But my rule of thumb, and I'd like to hear yours too, I know some brewers that go 20 gens on a pitch. So like for commercial brewers, that pitch of yeast could cost anywhere from $500 to $1,500, even more depending on the size of your brew house. So you definitely want to reuse that yeast. That's just part of the game.
Yeah.
We also share yeast amongst brewers. Like, hey, I just got done with this pitch.
Depends on how much you trust the other brewer.
Yeah, it depends. Like I would always take yeast from Matt, but yeah. Anyways, I typically 10 is like my max. Even 5, I start to like Gen 5, time for a new pitch. I don't know, but what's your take on that?
I go up 10 to 12.
10 to 12, okay.
I think you'll find after 12, I know a lot of breweries that go way past that, but there's studies that show that you start to get a little, after 15, 20, you start to get some genetic drift.
Yeah.
And the yeast ability to uptake those VDKs or uptake acetaldehyde start to diminish as well. And if you're reusing yeast, it's important to take copious notes on the dynamics of that fermentation and flavor notes as well. And if you notice that, all right, well, this yeast is finishing out a lot slower than it was, say, the last couple batches, then it's maybe time to pitch it. Not pitch it, you toss it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, it goes back to like record keeping, logging, taking measurements, writing notes to yourself. Immensely, something you need to do. And then also, I know we've done this too, like viability, right? Like viability tests, putting it under a microscope, doing the methylene blue or whatever.
Yeah.
Doing those tests. Like the longer it's in the walk-in, your refrigerator or whatever, that viability is going to go down. So like holding your yeast for a long, that's why it's good to give it to a friend, let them pitch it, reuse it, and you kind of share back and forth.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go ahead. So we got 5 minutes left. Let's go ahead and do a little tour if you don't mind. Maybe we can end up at the brew deck.
Sure.
You guys just hold this off and then
Let's do a tour of the brewery.
All right.
Guys,
It's not the biggest brewery in the world, but this is Max, by the way. For
Max
those
Brown.
who don't know Max, he's our GM and homebrewer extraordinaire as well.
Doe's member, yeah.
Yeah. So this is our brewery. This is a 10-barrel brew house. Right now, you caught us in the middle of our sparge, so we're running off wort from the mash tun into the kettle. Yeah, go on up. And look at that beautiful view we have.
What are you guys brewing again today?
We're brewing our blonde ale, one of our top. It is by far our top selling beer here.
You want to show us what's in the tanks, maybe?
Yeah, so we have 4 fermenters. We have 3 10-barrel fermenters and 120. This one right here, we just dry hopped our IPA. I always put a little, when we brew for that, just to make sure that we don't F it up. Double sure, this is a biggie. So Danville IPA, we have a hazy pale ale coming out, which I named Morally Flexible. That's just finishing fermentation. October Spas, which translates to October Fun, is our fest beer that we're releasing in time for Oktoberfest here. And the blonde, which we're brewing today. And yeah, and we have the ability to package beer here. We have a 3-head, that's the labeler, but we have a 3-head Twin Monkey canning line that we somehow fit into this tiny space. And a cold room with bright tanks with 7 10-barrel bright tanks. And then everything from there is plumbed out to the bar.
Yeah, if you're in the area, come on down. Danville Brewing. Matt makes amazing beer.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, award-winning beer. Amazing brewer.
We got one more question. We got a couple more minutes. If you guys
Sure.
want to take it.
All right, sure, let's do it.
How about what's the biggest issue you faced when scaling up a homebrew recipe to a commercial level?
I'll do one because I think.
State that if you like.
Okay, yeah. What's the biggest hurdle or problems you have faced when scaling a homebrew recipe to a commercial brewer? I remember one for me personally, hop utilization.
Sure,
I think goes way up. So like, what you might nail at 35 IBUs might taste or be really 45 to 50 IBUs. So I found scaling my hops or changing the hop utilization from like 100 to 120% within the software I was using really helped me nail that. That was one for me.
Your equipment. You have different efficiencies in your mash tun. It's a larger mash tun. You have different fermentation dynamics in your tank. So say a 10-gallon, even conical, is going to, the hydrodynamics in that conical are going to be much, much different than the hydrodynamics in a 10-barrel or 20-barrel fermenter as well. So you've got to take those into consideration.
It reminds me, I remember Nick, our friend Nick, the brewer at Bartlett Hall, I remember him saying, Vito, when you brew your first IPA, a commercial one, you're going to be like, holy crap, this is really good. And it comes back to that hydrodynamics. Like, in these bigger tanks, we're essentially fermenting under pressure because we have all that. So like commercial beer just tends to be cleaner, at least in my, you also have the oxygen, a bigger mass, so you're not, it's easy or harder to pick up oxygen on a commercial level because you have so much volume, whereas with a small amount of volume, to the ratio. So,
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, let's sign off.
Cheers.
All right, guys. Cheers. Thanks for joining us. Let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this, what you liked, what you didn't like, maybe any more questions. Also, where you'd like to see us go live next time. I'm having fun doing this. I'd like to do this again. So let us know in the comments what you think and where you'd like to see us go live. Cheers to brewing and cheers to homebrew.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.